Hey, I want to explain why I don't think Matthew chapter 8 verses 12 means true children of God are cast into hell. Let's just look at what Jesus says in the passage itself. First, let's read Matthew chapter 8 verses through verses 13, not just verse 12, because verse 12 is part of a chapter. So, this is called Marvelous Deeds, Power Over Disease, King James Version. And when Jesus was entered into Capernaum, there came unto him a centurion, beseeching him, and saying, Lord, my servant lieth at home sick of the palsy, grievously tormented. And Jesus saith unto him, I will come and heal him. The centurion answered and said, Lord, I am not worthy that thou shouldest come under my roof, but speak the word only, and my servant shall be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me, and I say to this man, Go, and he goeth, and to another, Come, and he cometh, and to my servant, Do this, and he doeth it. When Jesus heard it, he marveled, and said to them that followed, Verily I say unto you, I have not found so great faith, no, not in Israel. And I say unto you, that many shall come from the east and west, and shall sit down with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast out into outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And Jesus said unto the centurion, Go thy way, and as thou hast believed, so it be done unto thee. And the servant was healed in the selfsame hour. In this story, a Roman centurion, a Gentile outsider, shows faith in Jesus. And I'm going to repeat it. We can find this in verse 10. Jesus says, I have not found such great faith even in Israel. This shows Jesus is measuring people by faith, not nationality or religious background. And, hold on guys. And people back, in that culture did usually measure people by nationality or religious background, even though that isn't appropriate. They shouldn't do that. Here's the historical evidence for what they did. So in first century Jewish culture, Israelites were viewed as the natural heirs of God's promise because they were descendants of Abraham and part of God's covenant nation. A Roman centurion, however, was a Gentile and part of the occupying Roman army, so Jewish listeners would have expected him to be spiritually outside God's kingdom. Jesus intentionally praises the faith of the person least expected to belong. Then, in verse 11, Jesus says, Many will come from east and west and sit with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Biblical evidence. Sitting with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob describes participation in God's salvation and blessing. There's a banquet imagery which is similar to that in Isaiah chapter 25 verses 6. This clearly describes entrance into God's kingdom, not judgment. Now, what does east and west mean in the culture at this time? East and west was a common Jewish expression meaning people from the nations outside Israel, Gentiles from across the world. Jesus is teaching that outsiders who believe will be included among God's people. This means no matter what, anyone who believes in Jesus Christ, no matter where they are and what they have done, can come into the kingdom. Okay, so before verse 12, Jesus already defined the kingdom as a place of blessing and fellowship with Abraham, not hell. Then verse 12 starts with the word but, showing a contrast. Jesus says, But the children of the kingdom will be cast into outer darkness. Biblical evidence. The word but directly contrasts verse 12 with verse 11, meaning Jesus is comparing two groups within the same teaching. Okay, and here are the two groups. Believing outsiders who entered the kingdom, verse 11, and expected insiders who were cast out, which is verse 12. Now, I'm going to for verse 12, give kind of the culture background of what that meant, back in the biblical times. In Jewish language, children of the kingdom refer to those assumed to inherit God's promises, Israelites who possess covenant identity and religious privilege. Jesus uses their own culture title to warn that inheritance does not get them to heaven. It is by faith through him. So the inheritance doesn't matter, and that's what they thought back in the day. And then here is spiritual evidence. Jesus first praises faith verses 10, then welcomes believing outsiders, verses 11, and only afterward warns about exclusion, verses 12. This order shows the real issue is not being God's child by birth, but responding to God with genuine faith. So, a quick summary of what, verse 12 means. It means children of the kingdom here refers to people expected to belong based off their culture and society, what they thought, and what they thought was a lie, because it's not true believers who trust God. True believers who trust God will actually go to heaven. So I just wanted to give that, guys. That's the context for that verse and that chapter, giving, the biblical / historical, evidence and what that meant, and what Jesus actually said, and what Jesus was actually meaning, because obviously Jesus was, in that culture, so he knew, everything that was going on, and I hope that summarizes everything for you guys. All you have to do now to put your faith into Jesus Christ, it says, confess that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior with your mouth, and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, and you will be saved. And that is the only way that you can go to heaven, for we are saved by grace through faith. If you believe, you will not be condemned, but if you don't believe, you are already condemned. And that is not me condemning anybody. That is what Jesus clearly said in the Bible, and I am called to go make disciples of all nations. And I'm called to speak the truth of what Jesus told me to preach in a loving way. And speaking the truth is a loving way. If people are on their way to hell, and that is true, that is not me being rude and condescending toward people. That is me going out there and saving people. If there was someone in a burning building that was on fire, or someone was in a bad situation, and you were giving them advice on how to get out of that situation, that is not condemning them. It is telling them what they need to fix their situation. And what they need is Jesus Christ, and that is a choice, just like it says, for by grace you have been saved through faith. So it shows that choosing Jesus is a choice. It is a choice to believe. You have to change your mind and come to the truth and let Jesus come in. You have to seek Jesus. You cannot seek Jesus without a choice. And as soon as you seek Jesus, he fills you. His grace is what saves you. And there's many other good parables about heaven and hell that are in the Bible that I can even make videos on. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video. God's peace.